Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Bonsoir, mes amis. I am Andrew Berkshire, your host tonight for Game Over Montreal. This is Game Over Montreal, your Habs post-game hangout, recap, everything, analysis, whatever you want. Frankly, I think we all know what we're going to talk about tonight. The Montreal Canadiens just won against the Pittsburgh Penguins 4-2, but that's not really the main story, even though, let's be real, they laid a proper shit kicking on the Penguins tonight at even strength. The story is going to be Jacob Fowler. We're going to be talking about Jacob Fowler a lot tonight, although there's lots more than just Jacob Fowler to talk about. I've got my notebook here. The first segment, we're going to talk about Jacob Fowler, but I want to hear from you all, the people watching this show, how we should organize the second and third segments. I've got things that I want to touch on, but I want to hear from you because I think this is going to be a fun one. I think we've got lots of good stuff to talk about here, and it's nice to have it because the game against the Lightning was rough, and I feel bad for Kay that she had to do that one alone also, that I couldn't be there with her to help out because that game sucked. This game was awesome. There's a lot of good to talk about in this game. I want to talk about Caulfield. I want to talk about Lane Hutson, who should have that save on Sidney Crosby on the end of year best saves for goalies list. I want to talk about Owen Beck. I want to talk about Demidov. I want to talk about Slavkovsky. But most of all, I want to talk about Jacob Fowler, who was brilliant tonight in his NHL debut. So pop into the chat. Tell me what things you want to specifically touch on. And as we go through the show, I'm going to make sure that we get to it because I want tonight to be all about you who's watching, not just the Montreal Canadiens or my thoughts on the Montreal Canadiens. This was a fun one. All right, so the first period of Game Over Montreal, as always, is presented by one of our partners, Inchubiju. So before we get too deep into it, and by the way, thank you all for joining here. And if you really like the show, make sure you smash like on this and make sure you subscribe to our account because it really, really helps. But before we get too deep into it, we got to hear from our partners at Inchu, who are about to have another Maleficarum event coming up on, I believe it's December 20th and 21st. So if you'd like to check out an amazing makers market in the goth witchy space in Montreal, Inchubiju is where you need to go. All right, let's hear from them. At the famous chateau at 4000 Rue Saint-Ambroise lies one of Montreal's coolest secrets, a glamorous Gothic jewelry store owned and run by women. Inchubiju isn't just a business. They've built a community that supports bold creativity and expression. When I was first introduced to founder Astrida Pisigomian's shop, I was floored by the detail, vision, and scale of what she's built from her own mind. I don't think anyone would call me goth, but I know an innovator when I see one. Along with building their own business, Inchubiju also hosts markets for vendors in their space called Marché Maleficarum, boosting their whole community. If you don't live in Montreal, explore Inchubiju.com, where you'll find over 800 designs that range from affordable to bespoke. Check out Inchubiju right now, a Game Over partner from the beginning. Welcome back to Game Over Montreal. Once again, I am Andrew Berkshire, and I am so excited to chat with you all tonight. I'm going to put our chat on the screen here so that everyone can see themselves. And if you're not in the YouTube chat, you can see it on the screen. I absolutely adored the way the Canadiens played this game. I thought that it was probably going to be a good effort in front of Jacob Fowler tonight. It seemed like the Canadiens, especially like the quote from Brendan Gallagher yesterday, talking about how people might see Jacob as the savior, but to remember with Carey Price, no matter how great he was, that things were not always easy at the beginning. I love the care that this current Canadiens administration has in how they approach prospects. Now, I agree with a lot of folks that felt like maybe this was a panic move, bringing Jacob Fowler up, and it could have been a situation where you're kind of hoping that he's the savior. Now, he was brilliant tonight. He didn't need to be the savior because the Canadiens played really, really well, but not having that like savior pressure and like vocally saying that ahead of time, making sure that you're managing expectations, that's smart. It's very, very smart. All right, let's check in on the chat quickly here before we get too deep into it. And also, I want to steal something from friend of the show, moderator in the show, Trinka, because she stole from me. Well, not really. She read my mind. in starting this show, because my thoughts going into it were, it's probably good long term that Fowler didn't get a shutout in this one. I think if the game were called a little bit more evenly, he may have gotten a shutout anyway. But the narratives, as Trinka pointed out on Blue Sky, would have been completely out of control. The Habs fan base would have been, going absolutely nuts. And we probably already are, based on how Fowler played tonight. But if it was a shutout, it would have been extreme. And that's probably not good for Fowler, and it's probably not good for the Canadiens. So in the end, letting a couple goals in, probably a good thing long-term for Jake Fowler. But overall, absolutely brilliant. And man, Trinka, you're on it. You know me. King of the North, how you doing? You're very handsome as well. Bernardo, cheers. Ramelli is here. Hudson backup goalie. Yeah, Dobesh, poor guy. He went from starter to third string, and now Lane's coming for his job. Bernardo Saunier is here. Hudson robbing Crosby at the last minute to show him how cool it would be to play with him instead of against him is a genius recruitment move. I love that. 100%. How many more games does Sidney Crosby have against the Habs? We've got that upcoming back-to-back in December on a weekend. That might be his last two. It might be his last two, because I know it's delusional. I know it's a little delulu, but I believe Sidney Crosby will be a Montreal Canadien at some point. Ramelli says Carrier, Struble, and Anderson were the only bad players tonight. Yeah, it was a pretty complete effort. Sorry, I'm just going to have to dab my nose a little bit because I spent half the day today shoveling outside, and it was a lot. Steve LaRusick is here, says the only thing I feel bad about in this game was the overturned goal robbing back of his first NHL goal. Not even sure if it was offside. I agree. We'll get into that. What else we got here? Friends of the show. More Ramelli, says Carrier, the main story. Yeah, Fowler, Engstrom, and Beck all had great games. Yeah, that was huge. The fact that the Canadiens called up the top, I don't know if Beck's necessarily the top forward in Laval, but arguably the top player at each position, and all three of them showed up in a big way tonight, says a lot about not just the development of this organization, the quality of the prospects within the organization, but just the overall trajectory, right? The overall focus is good, and these guys are ready to step in and make a difference. Hi, Claire, you're here. Claire Capoletti says we needed that game and the good feelings. 100%. 100% we needed it. The game against the Blues didn't feel good. I think the Canadiens played pretty well, but second half of a back-to-back, having to play Dobesh both games, it was tough. But the game against the Lightning was not great. We needed a pick-me-up. Ramelli says, Strub and Carrier, that was rough. Yeah, Struble, I think, is playing his way down a little bit. Drink a K's meltdown. I will not comment, because I would melt down after that Lightning game too. I turned it off to play with my kids instead, which is rare. I rarely do that with the Canadiens. King of the North says, which save was better, Andrew? The Lane save on the empty net leading to the goal at the other end, or the one tonight? Ooh. That is so tough. Because that was great too. But Sidney Crosby, the glove save, I think it's tonight. Claire says the expectation would have been out of control if Fowler got the shutout. Yeah, they were already sky high. And they already are sky high. Andrew Gesprick says Hudson has two of the biggest saves of the season so far. He does. Absolutely. He just does everything. And, I was told he's not good at defense, that he can't play defense in the NHL. This is why you don't need to listen to people who are on TV all the time. All right, folks. Ramelli says 94.3% save percentage and a plus 2.2 goals saved above average for Fowler. Yeah, it was an incredible night. And most of his work tonight was done on the penalty kill. At even strength, the Penguins were not very good. You want to hear something really fun? Because I find this really funny. If you go and look at natural stat trick for this game, you would probably not expect it. But at even strength in the third period, the Penguins only had one high danger scoring chance. The Canadiens had 5. Even if you back it out a little bit further, 8-3 in favor of the Canadiens in scoring chances. Only 6 shots for the Penguins at 5-on-5 in the third period. Even with everything like tilting in their favor between the officiating and like the game state behind by 3 goals, you would expect them to have put more up there, but the Canadiens were really damn good defensively tonight. Like the expected goal differential, 66% in favor of the Canadiens. Like in the first period, 16 minutes of 5-on-5 ice time, the Penguins had one shot. Like the Habs were damn good tonight. They outplayed them every single period. It was great. There's nothing bad really to write home about in this one. Maybe discipline, but again, I think the discipline thing, we have to account for how bad the officiating was, right? I think on each call against the Canadiens tonight, you could fault the player getting called because I think they were all penalties except for maybe one. I think there was one where I forget who it was, but somebody just fell and they got called. I think it was Carrier. But overall, the Penguins got away with a lot more than the Canadiens did tonight. And that has to do probably with score, but also has to do with the fact that Sidney Crosby is on that team and the Penguins have been getting, the better half of officiating for 20 years. Has it been that long? Not quite. Maybe it has. This is the 20th season for Sidney, right? Because it would have been 05-06, his first year. 20 years in the league, Sidney Crosby. Unbelievable how good he is. And already 18 goals this year. It's nuts. Yet the Suzuki line, over 80% expected goals tonight. Lane Hudson, 80%. Like, this was a drubbing, especially from the top of the lineup. It was only really the Veleno line that was underwater tonight. And a lot of that happened just end of periods and around the ends of penalty kills, right? Where there was a switch off and they would get the first shift. So I am really, really impressed with what the Canadiens gave us tonight. And I think you all should be too. But let's talk about Jacob Fowler, because I'm not going to lie to you folks, as much as I don't really want to get into the comparisons to Carey Price and Patrick Waugh and Ken Dryden, who all won their first NHL game against the Pittsburgh Penguins as well. And I don't know if the Canadiens purposely set that up to give us the vibes, but even before the game, when it was delayed by a half an hour due to a car accident, I remember Brian Wilde. Maybe, I don't think it was Brian Wilde, actually. It was Brendan. Sorry, I'm too flustered by the way how good the game was, but Brendan Showbiz, I'm blanking on the last name, for the Montreal Gazette, said that there was something about this game that felt like it was going to be special. And I think the Canadiens delivered on that, and Jacob Fowler delivered on that. He looked clinical tonight. I saw, I think it was Keck Shows in the Discord, the Game Over Montreal Discord, had said that rebound control, is that legal? Like, yeah, he was absolutely clinical. His technique was spectacular. I'm hoping that we can get a goaltending expert on the show in the next little while to talk Fowler, because I think this is it's a good opportunity to talk about it and kind of break down what makes him tick and what makes him look so good to the eye if you're not like a goaltending person. But his save selection was fantastic tonight. His demeanor was calm, collected, and like confident to the point of almost cocky. The flashing of the leather tonight, I don't want to like compare him to the greats, but he did give me Carey Price vibes tonight. And that's not nothing. It's not just that he was able to control the game a little bit. It was the way he moved, weirdly. Like the way that he was gloving down pucks, his actual movement, the way he pulls it in looks the exact same as Carey Price did. Even the way it was the same glove save and the same way that he would stand up. That doesn't really mean anything because Carey Price is the gold standard where like how goaltending coaches teach goaltenders to play. But does it ever give like flashbacks? And no disrespect to Sam Montembeault or Jacob Dobeš or Jake Allen over the last couple of years. They've all had great moments, but none of them gave that feeling of security that Carey Price did. It's one game, so we can't be jumping to every conclusion possible. But Fowler had presence tonight, and I think the team felt it. And there was a lot more confidence with shooting the puck tonight than there has been in a long stretch. And I think it's a difference maker. Now, that Lane Hudson save on Sidney Crosby at the end of the game, if that goes in, I think they might be in a little bit of trouble with how much pressure the Penguins were applying and the refs willing to call a penalty every 3 seconds that the Penguins had the puck. They might have been in trouble. And that could have been a confidence-shattering thing for the Canadiens in general. But saving that might be the turnaround point for this stretch of the season where the Canadiens have been really struggling. There's a high potential, I think, for this team to start taking off and going in the right direction. You can see it building over the last several games. I know the Lightning game sucked, but the game against Toronto, they played really well. The game against St. Louis, they played really well in a tough situation and didn't get the best of it. But they're starting to pull themselves out of this rut. And at the same time, now they've got Jacob Fowler making a game like this happen. It feels good. It feels very good. All right, let's see what everyone's saying about Fowler here quickly. Let's see. Trinka says, I think a friend of the show, you should watch, click like, and subscribe. Yes, you should. About half hour in. Yeah, we'll do half hour for the first segment. What else is here? Ramelli. Yep, we talked about that. Bernardo says, fake up Jowler. I like it. Ramelli says, refs call penalty based on the score, not the game. 100%. Bernardo Sonny says, Texier can rip it. Yeah, I don't know how you all feel about Texier. I'm liking him. I know the stats are not great, but I think you have to put into context that the Canadiens, since he's been signed, have been in a huge rut, right? And it's not like they have the center depth to get good results right now. They're playing in a tough situation. So I think you have to take that in context. And he's not like, his career is not like a great stats player, but he has some good assets that he brings to the table. Trinka, that's so many years, talking about Crosby. 20 years is like almost the entirety of Jacob Fowler's life. Yeah, Sidney Crosby's been in the NHL longer than Ivan Demidov has been alive. Think about that, or don't. Brendan Kelly, thank you, Claire. That's exactly it, Brendan Kelly. King of the North says, speaking of Discord, I'd like to retract my borderline doomer post. Fowler proved me all wrong. You know, it's okay to be a doomer and it's okay to be hyped up. I think right now is a good time for Canadiens fans to truly get hyped up because, listen, you got to enjoy the little things. And I think this might be more than a little thing, honestly. Armelli says he even made the save against a tip shot. He did that several times tonight because Carlson was going for that move. The big, like, it looks like a big slap shot or a one-timer, and then he would go to the middle of the ice where a Penguin was sitting there to redirect it. Fowler made some big saves in this one, especially on the PK. Composure, Trinka, yes, 100%. And Piano Matt, welcome to the show, says, makes me lament that Price didn't have this kind of offense in front of him. I've been thinking about that all season long, Matt. The fact that Carey Price never had a team like this, it sucks. Because there was potential to build that. When Bergevin first came in, there was a lot of potential in that group to build something out. All they really needed to do was get the surrounding depth pieces, and he just failed to do it. And it sucks looking back on it. I miss Saku. Texier has definitely been decent. Clearly has talent. Yeah, I like the way he skates. I like the way he puts himself in shooting positions. I wish he'd be a little bit more selfish shooting the puck. But when you have the chance to pass to Ivan Demidov, I get it. And that's where he's been playing most of the time. But he looked good tonight. I thought him and Beck looked really good together. But Anderson is not aware enough to keep up with the two of them. They're both really quick. And Anderson, in terms of foot speed, is quick. But in terms of like thinking speed, is not as quick. So he's in good situations where he can like chase down pucks and kind of play a rugged, rough game. But when there's lots of quick passes and they're expecting you to like give and go, he struggles a little bit. There was a lot of times tonight where a puck would go to Anderson, and especially Beck, he would give like an area pass, expecting Anderson to like pick up what he was doing and be the first one there because he was in position to do that. And there's just the recognition a half second too late by Anderson, and then it turns into nothing. It's always been an issue for him. He's managed to end up being a good contributor despite his own deficiencies, which is a huge credit to him. Huge credit. Claire says he's on RDS right now and he's so damn adorable. So happy for this win. Yeah, speaking of Fowler, did y'all see his mom at the end of the game still with a full beer? She was just like ready to go. She had her phone out, but it was like hooked up to a charger because she's clearly been taking low quality videos from the stands of her kid the whole time and probably answering a billion messages. Yeah, it's fun. It's great. It's great. Romelli says can't wait for the Anderson contract to be over. Listen, as much as Anderson is not a great like player by the stats, I don't think he's a huge positive contributor to like wins overall. There are some things that I've heard that I don't have like third sources for or even second sources for about things that have happened behind the scenes in Montreal since Josh Anderson has been a part of this organization. And one thing I will tell you all, like I can't tell you specifics, but Josh Anderson is a stand-up person. And there's only so much that you should be willing to put on the cap for like character in the room. But with the Canadiens' current situation, I don't think his contract really harms them. And his leadership behind the scenes does matter. And some of the things that he's done for players on this team or for the team behind the scenes are huge. And you may never hear about them, which is a detriment, I think, and kind of speaks poorly to the media here. But he's a good dude, and I think that he's contributed a lot that doesn't happen on the ice. So that's something to keep in mind with him. But yeah, they will be a better team overall when they don't have that much of the cap stuck on Josh Anderson. King of the North says, Andrew, do you have a look at his big ass go moment of the game for me? Minus Slash assist on the cap goal. Okay, to be honest, I haven't seen the cap in goal. So I haven't had time to go back and watch it. I went up to give my kids a kiss goodnight in the second intermission, and I didn't think I took that long, but I guess I waited too long into the intermission, and I came back and 2 goals had been scored. So I missed the Penguins goal and the Kapanen goal. So I will trust you on that one, but Slash was friggin' amazing tonight. All right, Keck Shows is here. All right, let's shift into the second period here. Let's talk about Slav. Let's start with Slav, all right? Because why wouldn't we? We should be so positive about this guy right now. He is truly transcending. Oh, wait, I'm supposed to show the ad in between. See, I'm not on it tonight, folks. I'm too distracted, too hyped up by Fowler. But yes, our second period is presented by Le Saint Motel, which is right beside Inchu Bijou. They are partners in crime and business. And it's a really cool place. You should check it out. It's a selfie studio. And if that sounds like weird to you, you're maybe old like me. But once I went there and discovered like how it is and how, like all the creativity that went into it, it is damn cool and it's pretty fun. And also my kids love the ball pit. We're going to talk ball pits, folks. While you're browsing Inchu Bijou's goth shop, head next door and discover Montreal's most unique selfie studio. Whether you're looking to take some banger pics of your Halloween costume or cosplay, or you want to make some memories with friends, Le Saint Motel has you covered. Experience their bombastic decors that are always changing, hop in the ball pit, and take advantage of their extensive and flexible on-site lighting. Head to lesaintmotel.com to book your time in the studio, book private time where you and your friends will be the only ones allowed in, or book the space for an event. The dedicated, caring staff will make sure that you have a good time. I do have one warning for you before you book. If you have kids, they won't want to leave. Whether you're at Le Saint Motel or Inchu Bijou, tell them Game Over sent you. Welcome back, my friends. This is Game Over Montreal. I am Andrew Berkshire, and I see several requests in the chat to watch the Kapanen goal and react to it live. So we're going to do that. I think that's a great idea. I'm going to open that up right now. Unfortunately, we have to go by the NHL's replays at this early time, and their replays are so short and crap, but we'll get there. All right, let's see this. Let's see this. Are you kidding me, Slav? Ridiculous. His reach the speed, the instinct to attack. I'm going to watch it again. Man. Can we talk about the Demidov pass through 3 guys to get the puck to Slav as well? Folks, we're hitting like a different level for Uri Slavkovsky. And I'm talking like different level from 2 weeks ago when he took a big step like 6 weeks ago. This guy is, yeah, it's nuts. Romelli says, someone that they won't name in media was going on yesterday about how Slav lost his spot on the first line. Man, it's more than just not watching the game, because you can watch the games and see that Slav is playing kick-ass hockey and still think that the coach is making a decision to take him off that line and think like maybe the coach is dumb. But it's clearly that Marty St. Louis is trying to spread the wealth a little bit to survive this run of injuries that they're on, especially at the center position. They're just so thin there at the moment. Like those kinds of comments, it really betrays like a lack of understanding of nuance and like not seeing the forest for the trees. It's like the instant reaction to a single move in isolation without any context whatsoever. And like drawing wild conclusions from that. It's not good journalism. It's not good hockey analysis. I don't know who said it. You didn't name and shame, and that's your decision, and that's totally cool. But it's not an uncommon thing in hockey media, and it's sad because the standard is just really, really low. But yeah, Slav. My God. Did anybody expect the level of progression that he's made? And we're not talking points. We're talking play. Based on his rookie season. Like, I remember how worried we all were. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm above it. I was patient because of the age, but I think we were all kind of in agreement that first year he probably should have played in the American Hockey League. The development since then might prove us all wrong. Maybe he learned a lot of stuff in that first year where it was really tough for him that has really benefited him, that gave him like the wake-up call necessary to figure out what he needed to focus on to be a really good NHL player. But hats off to the kid and the Canadiens development staff and coaching staff, management group, to get Slav from there to here. Because it's not just about the team and the support structure. The player also has to do the work. They have to want to get there. And Slavkovsky is just, the motivation is so clear. And I think it is a trickle-down effect. Like, I'm not going to take anything away from him personally, because I don't think that it's right to do that. He has to still make the decisions and push himself. But when you have a guy on your team like Nick Suzuki, who is always looking for every possible edge to improve himself, who every single season seems to add a layer to his game that wasn't there before, whether it's expected or unexpected in terms of like where he's adding, but he just finds ways to get better every year. Even during years, he seems to add skills to his toolbox. When you're playing with a guy like that, especially on his line, it must be hard not to be at that same level. And in a similar way, Mike Matheson, right? Like we've all heard the stories of him in the gym and his fitness level. When you have a guy on your team, when you're rebuilding and you're not even expected to win, who goes that hard all the time, that bleeds through. That's the kind of leadership that echoes even after that player is gone, right? And the Penguins, by the way, have benefited from that with Sidney Crosby for 20 years. As we know, there's nobody in this sport who lives and breathes hockey as much as Sidney Crosby does. And we've seen the Penguins, you know, the joke for the longest time was like the Buzz Flibbit and Marc Dumont. They always have somebody to come up and be like a 60-point player out of nowhere. I really do believe a lot of that comes down to Sidney Crosby. And practicing all the time with Sidney Crosby, seeing his work habits. That kind of stuff really does matter. I don't know how to prove that other than I feel like it's almost self-evident. All right, Andrew Gisbert says he's realizing that he's good enough and big enough to impose his will in any spot on the ice. Second half slap is here to stay. Yeah, there's a realization there that he's not just a part to play on the top line. He can run a line too. It's nuts. It's nuts. Romelli says, even once Doc comes back, I'd keep Slav with Demidov and Kapanen and put Doc on the first with Cole and Slav. I think you mean Cole and Suzuki. But yes, I think that's a good idea because Doc has worked there before, and it's probably a lower pressure situation for him than trying to go right back to center. But he was also figuring it out before he got hurt, which really sucks that he got hurt again. I'm glad it wasn't the knee again, but worthwhile. But yes, Juraj Slafkovsky, the physicality is crazy. The instincts are crazy. There's only one thing that I can see consistently with Slafkovsky that I think he does need to work on is when he has the puck in the offensive zone and he's received a pass and his back is to the play, oftentimes he rushes it and he assumes that he doesn't have time and he kind of like hooks a pass across the ice, and usually it actually is the right play, but he's just a little off with the pass because he's rushing. So he's rushing, so he passes where he thinks the player should be, but the player won't be there for another like half second. And he needs that half second to like cue that other player that he's going to do that as well, right? It's got to be a kind of understanding that this is a play that's developing. And Slav rushes it a little bit, and oftentimes the puck just goes across the zone, off the boards, and then the opponents recover the puck and exit the zone. It's like a relatively consistent issue that he has in the offensive zone. But even that lately I've found has kind of disappeared. He'll still make the odd errant pass, but everybody does. It's less often. And that's good. It's very good news. Keksho says his outlet pass during D-zone exits needs work, but he's so young. Yeah, that's another one too. Yeah. Another one that he rushes, right? Because you assume that you're under pressure, and that's when mistakes get made. But that's probably another thing that will just iron itself out over time as he becomes more of a cagey veteran. The Habs in general, when they're struggling, I find zone exits out of the defensive zone are one of the biggest issues. And when they're playing really well, zone exits are like one of their biggest strengths. It's kind of ironic that like so much of what drives the Montreal Canadiens is whether they're exiting their zone cleanly or whether they're getting stuck by teams' forechecks. And a lot of it comes down to, are they having their forwards in position on the half wall when the defensemen try to flip the puck up the boards? Because the flipping the puck up the boards is a really bad move if you don't have someone there to get the puck immediately, because it's just a turnover in your own zone. Yes, it's at the point instead of near the net, but you're no longer in defensive position because you were in a position to flip the puck off the boards, which means you're close to the boards. So as soon as you turn it over, you are out of position without the puck. So you need to have that forward in the proper position before you make that decision. And oftentimes what the Canadiens will do when they're successful is they flip that puck up the boards. They've got their forward, their winger there to bump the puck into the middle. And then they have another player coming, whether it's Suzuki, Lane Hudson, whoever, will come through the middle, carry that puck out, or accept that pass, carry the puck out, and push things in the offensive direction. When they're struggling, they're flipping that puck up the boards, the forward's not there, and then it's back down below the goal line being ground into them, and they get out of position, don't cover the passing lanes very well, and bang, it's in the back of the net. Luckily, though, tonight, Jacob Fowler was up to the task of making some big saves, which the Canadiens have desperately needed recently and haven't been getting, and that was the difference. That and the fact that they kicked the shit out of the Penguins at 5-on-5. All right, folks, I think we can shift away from Slav now, and we'll go to the third segment here. just by going through the comments, I feel like what makes sense for the third segment will be to talk about the other two rookies tonight, Engstrom and Beck. We haven't talked about them too much, especially Engstrom. I haven't talked about too much. I wanted to save it, and I think this is the time. So we'll switch over to the third period. And as we do, we must remind you to please like the stream if you're enjoying us here tonight, and subscribe to Game Over Montreal and Game Over Network and all of our other sister channels if you really love us. And if you really, really love us and want to support us, you can head to thegameovernetwork.com. You can grab a toque like this or a shirt like this at prices that we try to make as affordable as possible. Designed by Game Over Network alum Brady Chalice. And you can also hit us up on Patreon. Links are below in the show, or if you're listening after, they're in the podcast description. And you can throw us a couple bucks there. We really appreciate it. And even if you can't, if you join our Patreon, you can get special permissions in our Discord channel where we do extra stuff as well. We want to do the most that we possibly can to show how much we appreciate the support, because it is very tough right now to grow from scratch in the sports space if you're not like a rage baiter, because the algorithm doesn't actually like the kind of stuff we do. Like, not at all. I know that there's an audience for it because we've already had it when we were with SDPN, where we averaged over 2,000 people a show, and we're continuing to grow. In fact, the Game Over stuff was up 26% year over year, which is pretty crazy in terms of growth for something that has no promotion, really. Especially on YouTube with a channel that wasn't ours. Like, it was more of a Toronto thing, and all of our markets were growing, all of them, which is, it's crazy. But we haven't been able to find our audience through the algorithm. So it really does help us if you can help us out a little bit. And, interacting does that. So everybody who's here in the chat tonight and watching live, we love you so friggin' much, because it's hard out here trying to grow in 2025, the land of algorithms and fascism and shit. It's shitty out there, but it's good in here. I've been dropping a lot of shit bombs tonight. King of the North says 4 goals for Stamkos after Andrew told me he's washed. I mean, the washed isn't the goal scoring. It's the rest of the play. Stamkos has been a pretty damn good player for most of his career, but the defense has really fallen off a cliff. But yeah, he can score. I think when we were talking about it on Discord, you had mentioned more as like a complimentary guy like Line A. And I think if you're going to replace Line A with Stamkos, I'm for that. But I don't want to pay a big cost for Steven Stamkos. I think the Canadiens could do better for cheaper than acquiring him just because of name recognition. But yeah, he could work, especially on the power play. Like, if you're playing Stamkos on the wing, you're probably not upset about it. Gesprick says, I mean, he had a total of 8 until tonight. Yeah, I mean, 8's still not horrible 30 games in for a player his age. Like, you're still pacing for a pretty decent season, but you're right. He's not the Steven Stamkos of old. That guy is probably not around anymore. All right, we got to talk about Owen Beck first, and then we're going to dig in on Adam Engstrom. I'm saving him for last. I'm sorry. But as always, we save the good stuff for last. Like our overtime segment at the end where you get to ask whatever you want, we save it for last because we want to keep you around and all that. You know, it's a cheap ploy, but everybody does it. So Owen Beck, I thought, was great tonight. I really liked how active he was, involved in the puck. It really sucks that his first NHL goal got called back by an offside that had absolutely nothing to do with the play at any point and was so fractional that I think it's really farcical that they made that call, if it was even offside. I'm really not convinced, based on the camera angles that are available, that they could conclusively overrule the official who was this far from Josh Anderson and said that it was onside. I do find that a little bit ludicrous, considering if it was offside, it was a millimeter offside. But I thought Beck played really great hockey tonight. And he reacted in the right way when his goal got called off, in that he just kept playing hard. He didn't seem to get bummed out about it, although he did seem to really want to get that goal back, especially in the third period late. He was really trying to get it, which I don't find a problem at all. I love that he's aggressive and that he wants it, right? I think he got jobbed. And let's see what you guys are saying as well. Zaxina says Struble out, keep Engstrom, might be a 3-man rotation on D and in net for a bit. Romelli is agreeing with that. And Keksho says if the Habs are trailing, this is a goal. Yeah. I think if it was a 1 or 2-0 goal also, it would have counted. But because it was 4-0, because they called the timeout first, it seemed like a officiating the score call from the NHL. And this is why I've been really railing on it this season. The rule book is extraordinarily vague in a multitude of areas, and it's on purpose. They could make rules for this sport much more black and white. In fact, for many of them, the IIHF already does, but the NHL doesn't want that because they want to, at the end of the day, on marginal calls, be the ones to say what does work or what is allowed and what isn't allowed. And they don't want to be held to a standard because they are wildly inconsistent on almost every call that they review. They want to have their finger on the pulse. Now, I'm not saying that's to like make one team win or make another team lose. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that the people at the highest height of like hockey men feel like they know how the game should be and how it should be played, and their version of the game is what it has to be. And I think that's relatively normal for any sport and how sports are managed. But with this specific sport, I think they work against it and they make it worse actively. And that sucks. And I think they made it worse tonight by calling off Owen Beck's goal. First NHL goal called back. And also, like, I understand it from the Penguins' perspective that they might think this is like the turnaround point for the season. They really needed a big bounce back game tonight. But let's be real, like, all due respect to their coaching staff, the Pittsburgh Penguins are not a playoff team. Like, super obviously. They're not good. And this continuing to go for it from Kyle Dubas, from the Penguins coaching staff, and acting like they're, you know, a contender in some way or could be with the age of that roster and the lack of depth and the lack of prospects to back them up. It's just delusional. And I think they were embarrassing tonight for making that review. Like, if you look at it completely out of context out of what the Pittsburgh Penguins organization is right now, and you see it as just like a team trying to stop a game from getting out of control so that they can turn it around and try to make the playoffs, it's justifiable. But in the context of what the Penguins are, and just like kicking and screaming, refusing to believe it, that they need to go into a rebuild, and now, it's pathetic, honestly. And I say that as somebody who really wants them to trade Sidney Crosby to the Montreal Canadiens, but not just because of that. I think that they're doing their organization a big disservice long-term by trying to like clasp onto this thing and not tear it down. It's going to make the rebuild last significantly longer because they waited too long to make moves on this stuff. Keksho says Bazoo was reporting that Kapanen had a hard time at faceoffs when he started and came from that he was following faceoff rules because in Europe they do. That is so crazy to think that you have to cheat to win. Yeah, I mean, that is a thing with a lot of rookies too, right? Like that learning curve in the NHL is like part of it is learning where the line is on how much you can cheat and how much or what you will be called for. And you see it a lot with rookies where officials are harder on them. They will call marginal calls against rookies that they won't call on vets. And I know lots of hockey people think that's fine, but why are there multiple different standards for different players? It's not the ref's job to make young players play a certain way, right? Like not any more than it is with every other player. Their job is to officiate the rules of the game and try to keep it so that It's fair, right? That's what rules are for. It's not to like make an impression on young players and like punish them more severely. That makes no sense. It's stupid. I was probably too harsh on the Penguins, but that's okay. Maybe we'll clip it. Hopefully it goes viral. But point is, I think Beck deserved better than that. All right, so Engstrom. I keep on forgetting to go for him. He was phenomenal tonight. Now, late penalty notwithstanding, because frankly, what was the standard tonight? It was a hook, I guess, but whatever. He was really damn good. There were tons of plays where he made up for other players' mistakes, where he would have like this phenomenal back check. He caught players in like odd man rush situations completely off guard. And part of that is probably because they don't know who he is and they don't know like how fast he is. So they might underestimate. But damn, was he ever hard on the puck tonight? He was in position pretty much all the time. Great support player. I would really like to see him play with Hudson. Claire has to head out. Good night, Claire. Have a good sleep. Yeah, it was a bit late of a game, actually. It's quite late. I would really like to see if he can handle playing with Lane Hudson, because Jaden Struble is not cutting it. I think, frankly, he's been pretty severely outplayed by Arbor Xhekaj of late, and it was surprising that Xhekaj was the one out, but I don't think it's a huge deal. But I think Struble is the guy whose spot is in jeopardy here. And that's kind of a pattern for him so far in the NHL is he'll get called up or get into the lineup and he'll have a stretch of really solid games. 7-10 games or so. And he looks good. Plays a simple game, but he's like capable of doing pretty good stuff with the puck. Like his puck skills are quite good. His like general skill set is actually really good. And then he'll kind of get a little comfortable and things will fall apart at the seams and he'll have a really long rough stretch. And we're in one of those right now. This could be just how he is, but maybe he just needs to be sat once in a while and like taken out. And I understand people think that Xhekaj maybe wouldn't be able to play with Hudson, so they're kind of stuck with Struble there. And I know Carrier has been having a tough season as well, but they have to make a move there because Struble is not cutting it with Hudson, and it's a problem. It's costing the Canadiens a lot. That said, I wouldn't do anything wrong to Struble right now because he took enough with that skate in the nuts. That looked horrifying, and I'm glad that he wasn't actually cut because ouch. That is a thin thing hitting you very hard. And it's, man, I don't want to know how much that hurt. I don't want to experience it. Kextra says, Engstrom being good against the Pens. I like him, but 87, and he's exactly Dubas' style. How dare you? How dare you suggest Engstrom gets traded after he has this come-out game? Yeah, I could see that being something. I could. That's annoyingly perceptive, Keck shows. But yeah, Engstrom was fantastic tonight. I thought he was great offensively as well. He almost scored like right off the bat. I think it was his first shift of the game. He took a really nice one-timer and Jerry just stopped it. But yeah, I'm really impressed. His skating ability and like anticipation is really strong. I want to get Patrick Bexel on the show, but he had like, because he lives in the UK, I think it's UK. He might be back in Sweden now, but his time difference makes it tough. So it would have to be an afternoon game or maybe a late night game. But I am going to talk to him for a video at some point anyway, because he's done so much work on Adam Engstrom, so much journalism on Adam Engstrom, being from Sweden and having connections with the SHL that like legacy media has not even touched. Like he is the authority, frankly, on Adam Engstrom, Patrick Bexel from Habs Eyes on the Prize. So if you go there and read about Engstrom there, you're going to know more about Engstrom than you would from any other source in hockey. Maybe like prospect scouts and stuff like that would have more. But Patrick is fantastic and has done a lot of work on that front, including like interviewing his coaches. And I believe he's got a new piece up as well, so you should check that out. But yeah, he's been clinical. Basically everything that Patrick told me about him is true. He is just a very good player, good hockey sense, good pace, good skill set, great skater. Like he's got a lot of assets. He may not be like a high end, like high ceiling player, but I think you put him with Lane Hudson, you're probably cooking. Romelli says Struble seems really confused with the puck in his own zone, like he doesn't know what to do with it. Tonight it was crazy. Yeah, he looks not confident. And I know Marty's preference has been to believe in his guys, and when guys are struggling, give them the space to play themselves back in. But I think Struble's been really struggling for a while here, and he might need to see from the outside first before he can find his game. Mr. Zandri says Fowler's rebound control is really good. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. It was a huge difference, right? And I love Jacob Dobeš. I think he's one of the most entertaining goaltenders to watch, like his style of goaltending in the league. But he's a little bit erratic. And Monty, we know, is he's a jittery goalie, right? He's able to make those crazy, in-tight, game-breaking saves because he's jittery and he moves a lot, maybe over moves. He makes shooters second guess. He's not as set on the long shots, and that goes against him. And he's not the greatest rebound control guy. Like he can swallow a good point shot for sure once in a while in the chest, but his positioning isn't strong enough, I don't think, to have great rebound control. Whereas Fowler's ahead, right? He's anticipating very, very well. So it's a lot easier to control the rebounds when you're already in place to make the save, as opposed to like reaching for it. Like Montembeau's athleticism and like reaction time allows him to make phenomenal saves that he sees at the last second sometimes as well. But his overall technique doesn't have that solid base that Fowler's does. And it's really hard to have great rebound control when you don't. Romelli says, let's be careful with Fowler. He has not spent much time with Eric Raymond yet, so his performance should fall down soon. I mean, I don't know much about Eric Raymond as a goaltending coach. But so I won't comment. But this season has been rough, to say the least. We've seen other goaltenders fall apart with the wrong goaltending coach. So sometimes it's about fit also, right? If a goaltending coach tries to put too much of a different style on a player who knows what style benefits their frame, their athleticism, their anticipation better, you can see things have friction. All right, let's shift to the overtime period, folks. You can ask whatever question you want. Let us go straight to the chat, and I will rant less. Andrew says, Raymond was there last year as well, but no one said shit about Raymond. Yeah, I mean, that's always the case. Last year was also a tough year for Montembeault in a way. Like, at the end of the day, he was... like, his season was okay. Like, it was good. He still was one of the better goaltenders in, like, goals saved above average and all that. But it was an inconsistent year compared to the year before. And that might have been because he had to play too many games. But so far this year has been really tough. I think to start the season, I don't really think Montembeault was playing poorly. I think he had a lot of bad luck, a lot of tips that went in, a lot of weird bounces that found their way through, like a lot of really bad luck goals. And I think just over time, because it wasn't changing, like it just kept happening over and over, no matter how well he was playing in the game, it seemed like there was always pucks that would trickle through on like just blind luck plays. I think his confidence got broken a little bit, and he started like believing what was happening was true performance instead of like a small sample where shit just goes against you for a while. And maybe you change something you shouldn't change and things fall apart, and it's been a real struggle for him to get it back. It sucks. It sucks, but it happens, right? It happens even to the best athletes in the world. There are times where You wouldn't think it, but you lose your confidence, you know? Romelli asks, dunno. I haven't looked at his under the hood numbers this year, but based on history, and I would assume acquisition price isn't going to be that high, I'd consider it. Like, we all know I love Jake Evans. We all love ourselves a Jake Evans. But Danault is an upgrade on Jake Evans at least. And probably one that's pretty affordable to make. And I'm not saying I would put Jake Evans out of the lineup, but it might put Kapanen onto the wing. You can put Danault there. You never know. There's lots of potential there, but I don't know. Romelli says, I've been saying fire Raymond for 2 years. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who on the coaching staff is the most ripe for replacement. I think there are issues in terms of some moves they make are a little bit slow on the uptake, but usually they're pretty decent. But all these guys outside of Raymond, I guess, who's a veteran goalie coach, are like developing at the same time as the players in a lot of the ways, which is it's an interesting situation that I don't think has a parallel in the NHL. Maybe not even in sports, to have such a young team with such an inexperienced coaching staff. Kind of like, not only does that look and sound like a recipe for complete disaster, but a rookie GM as well. And it just seems to be working, you know, and like way faster than anybody expected it to. And everybody seems to be getting better at their job at the same time. It's wild. It's wild. I Miss Sago says, Suzuki, Danault, Dvorak, Evans could win a round or two. Yep, we have seen that before. Zaxina says, how do we feel about Hudson Dobson? I like it. Also, if Carrier can't figure it out, do we see Reinbacher at some point in the new year? I mean, Reinbacher's got to stay healthy. I'm starting to get a little worried about how much time he's missed, just not in terms of like, oh, he's going to be a bust, but like his development time will just have to be extended a little, right? I think that if he had played all of last season and this season so far, we'd probably be asking for him to get called up already, which is unfortunate. Honestly, he might have made the team out of training camp if he played a full season last year, or didn't miss like half a season, or was it even more than half a season out in Europe as well. Like, he's had a really tough run. So kind of like Gooley, right? These guys have to give us a stretch here. I mean, if Gooley's in the lineup, we're probably not talking about Reinbacher right now either. Romelli says, I have a question. Why the F did they put Bolduc back on PP1 instead of Demi while the PP was doing so well? Man, I don't know. I will say with Bolduc, I've seen a lot of folks not being impatient. I don't think that's true. I like just being a little rash, I guess. Expecting more. But we got to remember he's a young kid too. Like, he's also developing. And I know Marty said that recently, that he's a work in progress. And I don't know how folks reacted to it. I didn't see much reaction to it. But I thought that was very honest from Marty, and like a good reminder that the Canadiens didn't acquire Bolduc to be an immediate top 6 player, like plug and play, even though he was that for St. Louis last season. They acquired a young player who is still on a development path. And with their history and like their record of development, I'm willing to trust them a long way on Bolduc, because he is a damn good player based on history. We've seen him at his best, or maybe not his best. We've seen him good. We've now seen him bad. I think he's playing pretty well right now overall, but he has no confidence offensively, which is tough because you know he can do it. But the guy needs to shoot a little bit more, and he needs to be a little bit quicker. But he really looks not confident right now. But he'll get it back. I'm not really worried about him. Romelli says, I like Baltic. Yeah, it's just why would you mess with that power play? I agree. I just went off on a tangent on Bolduc. I didn't mean to insinuate that you didn't like him. But yeah, compared to Demidov on the power play, that is it's such an obvious call to keep him on that power play that I'm not sure what they're doing. I'm sure there's some method to it, but I don't think it's the right decision. And every coaching staff is going to have something like that, right? Kextra says, I will meet you in the middle. I want him on the first line with Slav on the second. Now get Demidov on PP1. Yeah, that's fine too. Yeah. I mean, he was good on that top line tonight. He's not as connected as Suzuki and Caulfield are, which is a tough standard, but Slav is. So it is tough to make that change. But I thought he did a lot of good work tonight. Just offensively, he needs to be like, the decisions need to be, and he's more like half second behind that. And not confident in his shot right now, which is weird because he has a friggin' great shot. He's just got to start releasing it. I'm reading off my small phone on the chat instead of the computer screen right here because, I'm very smart. ParJF says, to me, Bolduc and Waugh are about as good with the still work to be done. Waugh at his best is very good too, yet he has bad games. Bolduc is starting to be seen based on his bad games. I totally agree with you. A lot of folks are also willing to write off Joshua Waugh. Not necessarily here, but I do see it a lot. And I'm not. I think there's still a player in there. And at the very least, I think if he becomes a trade piece, the Canadiens, like, it'll not be a small piece. Like, he's not a throw-in guy. He's a good prospect. Like, he can be a good NHL player. We've already seen him be a good NHL player. Bernardo Sunier says, I don't understand why they don't try Demidov with Bolduc. It seems like an obvious fit. Yeah, it does. I wonder if it's just like they're worried about also Kapanen and just like an age thing, but that just doesn't seem like a Marty thing to be worried about. Again, probably some method to the madness, but it doesn't make sense from an outsider's perspective, that's for sure. Romeli says, also, Evans being out reminds us of how damn good Suzuki is on the PK. Man, is he ever like, what can't that guy do? Apparently draw a call when you get sucker punched. That's about it. Keksho says, now I think the reason he gets PP1 is he fits the formation they want to utilize this year on power play 1, with the Suzuki Caulfield share the left circle and Slav getting right circle, but often going net front. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, they might be just trying out different looks too, so they can utilize different looks against maybe different PK setups. Maybe that's what they're trying to think of, and they want to get reps for both come playoff time, depending on who they face. There's a lot of stuff that Marty does, and I don't want to like give him extra credit based on how things worked out, but just based on trying to watch really closely and figure out what's going on and what decisions are being made, there's a lot of things that Marty does that I think he's trying to look 10 steps ahead instead of solving the immediate problem. And that's been very beneficial during the rebuild. But there will come a time where he'll have to look more at the next step. But while fans think that time is now, well, not all, but some fans do, and a whole hunk of media do as well, this is still a development year for the Canadiens. Like, this is still a year, like, in the rebuild. Yes, it's been sped up, but this is still a rebuilding team. Like I said at the beginning of the year, this is a boom or bust year. Now, it looked like it was going to be pure boom at the start, and that was awesome. But it's a long season. Ebbs and flows happen. Now they're trying to dig themselves out of that rut and doing a pretty good job of it now that they can get a couple saves based on 1 game sample size. But this is still a young team that's on a development curve that needs time to become a real contender. Can they win a couple rounds in their current formation? Absolutely. If they hit lightning in a bottle, or even if they just play well. Like, I think they could have beat Washington last year if they got a few more saves. That's not against Dobesh, but Montembeault last year was the better option. And I really truly think that they could have won that series, even though the officiating was so tilted. This year, I think they could easily win 1-2 rounds and surprise a bunch of teams, but that's not a guarantee. They're not at contender status now where we should expect that. So we do have to have some patience. But yeah, Marty, it's weird. I do think he thinks too far down the line sometimes. But I think also that it's cool to have somebody thinking ahead, because not just in hockey, but like in modern society, we just don't think far into the future right now. Like we just plan for the next quarter, making rent next month. You know, the NHL is next game. Thinking ahead is good, even if it can be frustrating in the moment. And I say that as somebody who would experience the frustration right with you, because sometimes it's a little bit baffling, like taking Demidov off power play 1. Romelli says, if everything goes perfectly, the Montreal Canadiens might start to be a contender in 2 years. I think that's fair. I think that they could become a contender faster if Reinbacher takes a step and they acquire somebody like Sidney Crosby. Like that, not necessarily that level, but a big improvement that would be a player much closer to Suzuki's level than Doc, Evans, or Kapanen are, right? If they were to acquire that kind of player and Reinbacher would step up, I think they would push into contender status faster than 2 years, maybe even as soon as this year, just because that's such a huge upgrade. But yeah, 2 years seems pretty fair to me. 2 years is also about when I expect a guy like Michael Hage to start making an NHL impact, which would be super fun. Zaxina says, probably not the night to bring it up, as they were very good. But if this coaching staff doesn't grow up fast enough, is it insane to bring in a veteran assistant coach that's been there like Tortorella? I wouldn't bring in Torts, but I have no problem with them expanding the coaching staff or changing who's on the bench and having like a more veteran presence there. I would hope that Marty doesn't have the ego to see that as an insult and would see it more as like an insulation and an area of growth for him. He just doesn't seem to have an ego in that way. He has an ego in that you tell him he can't do something and he's just going to do it out of spite. All right. I think we got to wrap it up, folks. Yeah, Keksho's next election cycle. I know it sucks, man. It sucks. It sucks. And our voting system sucks. First past the post is garbage. We have no real representation. All right, we got to end it before we go on a politics rant. As much as I love doing it, and if you encourage me, I will. But we got to end it because we got to sleep. All right, Romelli says, bring back Tyrion. Oh my God, could you imagine? All of a sudden, Lane Hudson starts getting scratched. Bernardo Saunier, I just think they need a Ted Lasso set up and get an X's and O's coach. Yeah, they need the assistant from Ted Lasso. Romelli, did I read somewhere that Bergevin and Tyrion are Canada GM and coach for Spangler Cup? Really? Just still thick as thieves, eh? Even after all this time. So strange. This is a big year where they find the holes in the lineup. Yes, absolutely. All right, I love you all. Thanks so much for watching Game Over Montreal. Please smash like on this. Please tell your friends if you enjoy watching the show and enjoy the analysis that we bring. I love being with you here after the games, especially after wins. It's so much more fun when we're covering wins. There've been so many losses over the last 4 years. We've suffered greatly all together, but it will get better. It is getting better right now. Good night, folks.